Hello, Betham. It's been a few weeks since I did a Shabbat video with you. I apologize for the gap for those of you who wanted them, and you're welcome for those who wanted a break. But here I am doing it again, hoping to continue this rhythm as I've gotten some good feedback from it. Originally, I had something that I wanted to share with you that was going to lead into a meditation that did not have a Parsha connection. I was going to apologize in the beginning of the video for being Erev Shabbat and not connecting my words to a Parsha connection, but I actually found one without having to look as hard as I thought. So I'll do both. In brief, I want to talk to you about the Hebrew root Shin Mem Ayin. Shema is one of the first Hebrew words or roots that Jews know, Shema Yisrael. The reason I want to talk to you about it is that I had the great blessing and honor this past week at a retreat I was at. I've been asked to be a mentor to other newer and younger rabbis in a 2-year mentorship program, and the program began in a retreat this past week. And I led morning services one of the days with a new colleague I'd never met before, a Reform colleague in a non-denominational synagogue in Portland, and we collaborated to lead tefillah together. It was really nice. And we decided to focus on listening and hearing. And I did a meditation as part of that tefillah, that prayer that I'll do at the end of this video. But we spent a lot of the time choosing prayers from the liturgy that deal with that concept of listening, including, of course, Shema, and some poetry from the Jewish tradition and beyond that deal with the question of what it means to hear someone. And there was a beautiful etymological discovery of the root that Rabbi Stone shared that I want to pass along to you, because I was so taken by it, things that I kind of knew but I'd never heard brought together all at once, which is how many different things that Hebrew root, Shin, Mem, Ayin, Shema, which we think we can translate so easily, means, just from biblical context, let alone what the rabbinic interpretation did. So, of course, Shema means to listen, to stay focused, to pay attention, as in Shema Yisrael, listen up, attune your ears. It means not just to pay attention, but to hear, just to hear that something was there, like when God says that God heard the voices of Adam and Eve when they were in the garden. It's just a hearing. To internalize, to register, that root means, to take to heart, as in God's having understood and internalized the cry, the pain of Yishmael in those early stories when he is cast aside in Genesis. And to respond in action. The root Shema means not just to listen, but to do something as in response, as it says Abraham did, Vayishma, what Sarah asked him to do. Those are just some of the ways in which the root is used, including, or I'll add to it, I think it's the one and only time that the root is used in Parshat Noach, the Parsha we're in this week. Most of the story of Noach, obviously, is Noah, the flood, the ark, etc. But I think, as many of you know, tucked in at the end of the Parsha is a very short story that's become very well known in Western intellectual history, and that is the story of the Tower of Babel, Migdal Bavel. And it's in that story, as God and the angels are trying to figure out how to deal with the citizens of that area building a tower too high, who all spoke Safa Echat, one language, the Torah says, Hava nirdav lasham, let's go down and we'll mix things up for them, we'll confuse them, Sfatam, we'll confuse their language, Asher lo yishma'u ish safat re'ehu, so that they will not understand one another. Right, that they will be able to they'll be able to hear. It's not putting earplugs in, but they will not understand, and that lack of understanding will lead to disunity, and that disunity will lead to destruction of the tower. That's exactly what happens, according to the story. In fact, Rashi raises the stakes for what happens when you do not understand, because Rashi says what it meant when God said, let's make it so that they do not understand. It will mean that as they're trying to build this tower, one of them asks for this building material, and the person will understand it differently, as if it's in a different language, and give them something else instead, something which they not only do not need in that moment, but they won't be able to handle, won't be able to hold. It'll fall. It'll hit someone in the head. That person will fall off the tower and die and crack his head open, and all of this destruction will have come from the absence of shmi'ah, the absence not just of hearing, the absence not just of listening, the absence of understanding the other person. Wow, are we seeing in our society everywhere what happens in small, medium, large, and tragic chunks when people forget the human power and obligation to shomea, to listen and understand before responding, to listen and understand before instantly judging. People cry and people die because of that absence. At the retreat, I did this meditation that I'm going to do in a second, where I asked people to close their eyes, and again I'll lead it in a moment, and focus on listening in to the internal voices that we sometimes ignore, and listening out to the external voices that we'd rather not take to heart, because paying attention to them and trying to understand them can be hard and challenging, and particularly in an era where there's so much out there that is uncomfortable for us to listen to. My blessing to you and the obligation I take upon myself this Shabbat is for us to try to lean into as many of those shomeas as we have. To listen just to hear, to make sure that we're not living with theoretical earplugs in our ears, but we're listening to the sweet sounds around us, to the sounds of society and sounds of being alive. That we listen and obey, meaning to do the things that people who we want to have a good relationship with ask of us to do. And that we try to listen and understand the people around us, even and particularly the ones we'd rather not have to spend time understanding. That perhaps may be the most sacred Shema Yisrael that there is. So listen up, Israel. Or as Rabbi Ariel Stone creatively translates the Shema, Shema Yisrael does not mean hear, O Israel. It means something like listen, concentrate, stop looking for a moment, listen. Stop speaking for a moment, listen. Create a silence in the soul. Still the clamor of instinct, desire, fear, anger. Strive to listen to the still, small voice beneath the noise. Listen up this Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom. And for those who are still with me, we're going to turn this idea into I promise you it'll be a quick meditation that we can use as we go into the Shabbat mode. So unless you are driving or cooking or over a hot flame, I want to ask you to be seated. Hopefully you already are. I'm going to ask you to do what I'm about to do, which is to close your eyes. And if you're in a mostly quiet room, you'll already feel something changing in your body, a certain sensation that indicates that you're in a different mode. Could be a body corporeal quiet or a tingling, or both. Feel the dignity of your posture with your spine holding you up and everything else being given the great blessing of sagging, drooping, but in a lovely way. Find the muscle group that you rarely relax and relax it. It might be your eyelids, even with your eyes closed. Can you notice the difference between them being clenched, activated, and released? Your jaw hanging open just a little bit to show a sense of soft and supple wonder at the world. I want you to spend a few moments in this quiet reverie with your attention focusing inward, listening in. What does it mean to listen in to yourself? What are the internal voices, the parts of you that you most delight hearing? What of your inner dialogue, when you listen to it, fills you with joy and a sense of the wonder of being alive? What's the listening in, my friends, that you don't want to pay attention to, but you probably should. The voice is telling you to stop doing something or to start doing something else. That when your mind goes there, you quickly move it away because it's easier. Can you listen in to that voice as well? And we live in an internal world and a relational world. And so we listen out. We hear all sorts of things. And the same prompt. Conjure in the tremendous creativity of your mind's ears, because you can hear something in your mind. Whose are the voices and what are the sounds that when you listen to them outside your own body are the most delightful? Whose voice lifts you up? Whose words are sweet? What is the listening out that is all earned pleasure? How do we tune our ears to make sure that we hear such sounds that hold us in beautiful ways? And the harder one, whose voices do we have access to that we choose not to listen to? Who are the miniature prophets in our lives that we'd rather turn away from? What is the shmi'ah, the listening, the hearing, the understanding of voices around us that are the hardest of our challenges, but which could lead to the most momentous of transformations of self? Hear them too. Shema Yisrael. Listen to those voices as well. And as we hopefully go into a day-long period where some of the external voices of society are quieted or tuned out as we pull away from technology and a little bit from civilization, let us make it a Shabbat where the most joyful and the most important of voices are precisely the ones that we are listening to, precisely the ones we are hearing. Internal and external. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes as I have. And I wish you a Shabbat Shalom.